Hey everybody, I'm Chris McGlynn, and today I wanted to make a video on what is a good beginner camera for you to buy, and I have two options for you that are less than $1,000. Now you may be thinking $1,000 is a lot of money, but if you want good quality photos, good quality videos, you may have to consider spending that or just consider filming on an iPhone. So the good thing about the iPhones nowadays is it does film in 4K, and the newest iPhone X also films in 4K 60 frames a second. They also do slow motion. So the main difference between an iPhone and something like a point and shoot or a crop sensor or full frame camera is the sensor size. So it's not going to give you good low light performance. It's not going to give you that bokeh effect. And by bokeh, I mean that blurred background effect. And it's just going to be limited to multiple things that you can get out of a other camera. Now, when it comes to looking at a camera that you might want to jump into as a beginner, I would highly recommend starting out on a crop sensor camera. Now, I don't have a crop sensor camera. I'm filming on a full frame, but I can kind of show you a little example. And the one that I would recommend, and I believe you can get it for about $500 right now, is the A6000 made by Sony. The A6000 is the camera that I started out with. It does do 1080 at 60 frames per second, so you can get slow motion, but no 4K. It does allow you to interchange lenses, so you can just take it off, put in another lens. So you can do a zoom lens or a prime lens. So it gives you that functionality that you might need if you need to zoom in or if you need to do a prime lens. Usually prime lenses give you better background blur if you're doing a lower f-stop. And some of this stuff might be a little bit too technical for you. Like if I'm talking about aperture or bokeh or f-stop, that's all generally the same stuff. Bokeh refers to the blurred out background. F-stop is aperture, so what number you're using, and I'll create more videos in the future because I don't want you to be bogged down by all the technical aspects. Okay, I just want to help you out in getting your first camera. So with that being said, that camera is about $500. If you have a little bit more, maybe $700 to spend, I would go for the Sony a6300. Reason being is it shoots in super slow motion. So 1080p at 120 frames per second. So you can really slow down that footage if you want to create a nice cinematic effect. Also, it does do 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second. So really good quality out of that camera as opposed to 1080. And some of you may be thinking, why do I need to shoot 4K? Well, the reason being, and the reason why I like to shoot like this videos in 4K is if I need to crop in to different things in my image or in my video, if I need to zoom in a little bit more, I'm not going to lose that much quality as opposed to 1080p. Another reason for 4K is a little bit of future proofing. So nowadays you can stream in 4K, and if you've ever looked at 4K footage, it's just a lot more crisp, the colors are more vibrant, and I believe it gives you even a little bit better low light sensitivity or quality at least. If you remember what 720p looked like, and then you went to 1080 at full HD, and now we're at UHD at 4K, I mean, there's a significant difference. So if you can spend that extra $200 or $300, I'm not sure what the market rate's going for them, I would highly recommend shooting or going for a camera that can do 4K. So you're gonna need a lens for that body. I would highly recommend starting out with just this Sigma, and I don't know if this camera will pick it up, but it's a Sigma 30 1.4, and they also make, I believe it's a 16 1.4. When it comes to crop sensors though, you're not gonna get that 16 millimeter or 30 millimeter. You have to times it by 1.5 because it's a crop sensor. When they're talking about 30 millimeters, that's talking about a 35 millimeter frame. So your full frame cameras are going to shoot 30 millimeters if that's the lens you're using. If you're using a cropped lens, you have to make sure or remember that it's going to be 1.5 times 30 millimeters. So this could get you close to a 50 millimeter lens, which is going to be closer up. A 16 millimeter lens on a full frame will give you a huge, wide, good landscape, picture. On a crop sensor lens, it's going to come in a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. It's not a huge deal, but just keep in mind that if you get 100 millimeter lens, which is like let's say a macro lens, it's going to be 150 millimeters. So you're going to be really close to your subject. So just keep that in mind. I always say for a crop sensor lens, go for the 16 millimeter because you can always crop in. Shoot in 4K if you need to crop in a little bit more, or just get a nice zoom lens. The kit lens for these cameras are also great. I highly recommend this lens. This is what I use on the A6000 and the A6500. And I know I didn't mention that, but the A6300 is cheaper, that's why. So it's not a huge difference between the two. My next camera would be, you could get a point and shoot, okay? So this is the Sony RX100 Mark V. I don't have the RX100 Mark VI, it just got released, but I highly recommend this camera over that camera unless you need maximum zoom potential, because this camera will shoot 24 millimeters to 70 millimeters, okay? With the other camera, the Mark VI, it'll shoot 24 to, I believe, 200 millimeters, okay? So that's just, do you really need that extra reach? And it is a big reach. The biggest thing, and the reason why I say don't go for that, is low light sensitivity, where this shoots at f1.8. The other one is a constant 2.8. So this is 1.8 at the widest, at the 24 millimeters. Once you start zooming in, the lowest aperture is 2.8. So low light, isn't that great, but you do have that 1.8, and it's really good if you're, if you're on vacation and you want to film something outdoors at night, it's good to have that 1.8 versus a 2.8. Now, if you're getting into filming in advanced features like this camera does have, S-Log2 for instance, a flat image profile, and I can show you really quick what that looks like. The ISO native, or the lowest ISO you can get, is 800. Okay, so when you're bumping up to 2.8, you're gonna have to sacrifice some ISO. So that'll introduce some noise to your footage. Keep that in mind. Okay, for photography, I think either one will be fine. Shooting in RAW, I think you'll recover a lot of the detail that you might lose. Not necessarily lose, but shooting in RAW, you can definitely get away with, a 2.8, and you won't lose that much information because it is a point and shoot. So you're not, gonna take pro level, photography with it. You're not gonna blow up the pictures. So this is a great camera. If you're also getting interested in vlogging, which I know that's, pretty popular, you have your screen that you can flip, so you can see yourself. I have it on this little guy, a little tripod, nice and lightweight. This is an awesome travel camera that I highly recommend. Image quality, let's boot it up and see. We'll hop into this camera really quick. So with this camera, if you're outdoors at a very sunny day and you're shooting at f1.8, your image is going to be completely blown out. Now let's take a look at what it will look like with that. So let me change the settings. Let me turn the ND filter off because it has it built in. Okay, let me show you what I mean and what's really cool about this camera, because I have a $200 ND filter on the one that we're filming on right now. Not fun to spend that much money on a filter. It is a variable filter. It is very nice, high quality, but it's just not, if you don't have to spend that, this guy has it built in. So let's jump in this camera and see, what's really good about this camera. Now we're in the camera. You'll notice that everything is blown out, right? That is the ND filter off. And now let's turn it on. So we'll go in 3, 2, 1, boom. There you go. So, still a lot of things are overexposed, but let's say, you're filming yourself, that looks good. Now let's turn the ND filter back off. Everything's washed out. See? And on. Boom. So, still overexposed a little bit. Let's say you want everything behind you, in focus, or not in focus, but nicely exposed. You just turn the dial and lower your f-stop. And now things out there are nice and exposed because of that built-in ND filter. That's what it's like. This is at 24 millimeters, 1.8. You can see that the background is blurred around me. Okay, so even like indoors, you can see the lights, are nice and blurry, nice little bokeh balls. So I highly recommend this camera. It does shoot 4K. You do have zoom, So let's zoom in. It is a little bit slow of a zoom, but you can zoom in, and it still has that nice background blur if you want it. It has built-in image stabilization, so it's good enough to be handheld. I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of beginners have been asking me questions on what camera would be good to start out with. I highly recommend this camera. I highly recommend Sony in general. If you don't have a camera right now, I would highly recommend jumping into the Sony line, because in my honest opinion, I think that Sony is just taking the lead. You have Panasonic with the GH5 that's also doing great things. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Both these cameras, I mean, you can buy this used for probably $600, $700 on eBay or Craigslist, maybe even less. And then the other ones that I mentioned, the A6000, A6300, with that lens that I showed you, you're still gonna get under that 1,000 mark. And again, this can fit in your pocket. You can put on a little tripod with it, shoots 4K, shoots super slow, 120 frames per second, 1080p. Sony claims that this camera has the fastest autofocus on the market. I don't know, my A7R III is pretty darn fast. We'll have to see, but again, the biggest thing is the other one, the A6300, you can change the lenses. The good thing about, you know, changing your lenses is you can invest in good full frame lenses that can fit on a crop sensor. That way you're kind of future proofing your arsenal, so that way when you do, or if you do upgrade your camera, those lenses will fit on perfectly and you'll get even better image quality, okay? So that's my thing. The biggest thing with this is you can't take the lens off, so you're stuck with this little zoom lens, but this is a cool camera, as you saw. Okay, let me know what you think of this video. If you want any more, please like, comment. This is going on Instagram and YouTube, so you know some of the functionality you can't do on one platform versus the other, but please leave a comment. You can definitely do that, and let me know what you think. Let me know any other future videos that you might want to see come out, you know, sooner. I'll definitely devote more time to that, but if not, catch me again for another video. Thanks.
On your body, I don't wanna waste